How to make a jungle gun finger. Start with a clean hand. Make a fist, point your thumb up, and then point your index and middle finger out. Apply a generous amount of screw face, and then play a tune. What's going on? It's Stranger and welcome to another YouTube music production video where my mission is to help you succeed in making music. And today's video is going out to all the old school junglers. We're going to be recreating the Reese bass found in Ed Rush and Optical's classic track Locust. Specifically, we're going to be doing the remix version called Cutslo. So comment down below and let me know what year you got into jungle and drum and bass music. Now, to do a Reese video, it would only be right to mention one of the founding fathers of techno, Saunderson. He had a pseudonym called Reese, and he made a track called Just Want Another Chance, and that's where the original Reese bass comes from, and hence the name. And I'll leave a link in the description below so you can check out Saunderson's original Reese track, because it's important for you guys to appreciate and understand where the original samples and sounds were inspired from. And if you want to support me, I'm going to be selling the project. I'll leave a link in the description. I'm going to be including a bunch of my own personal MIDI clips with the Reese bass. However, I will be excluding the patterns of Locust just to respect Ed Rush and Optical, but you will have access to a number of MIDI patterns that I create, which you can use for your song. Now, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button, write a comment, and share it, because all that helps my channel grow. If you want to see more content like this, then make sure you hit the subscribe and bell notification. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Okay, so I've imported Just Want Another Chance into Ableton. Now make sure it's the 2-minute and 30-second version. That's the version where you can find the Reese at the very beginning of the track on its own without any other sound in the background. Now we're going to zoom right in. Now I'm not going to play the song out for copyright reasons, but again, you can find it in the link in the description. Pretty much it's the first 2 bars. So I'm going to highlight this section here and just hit Command or Control L to loop it, and then right click to crop the sample. Now the sample is on its own. I'm going to pull out sampler, and we're going to pull the sample right into sampler. So now we can play it on our MIDI keyboard. And I'm just going to increase the volume here so we can see the waveform a little more clearly. So notice that there are a couple notes included in this loop. Now, it's up to you which note you use. You can use the first note here, or you can move the start point to the next note, or the third note here, and then this last note. However, I'm going to use the first note and just move the end point of the sample. We want to set the sample endpoint right when the first note ends. Now, in order to play longer notes with the Reese, we're going to have to loop the sample. So we're going to enable the loop mode here. Now notice there's a click every time we reach the end of the sample. To fix this, we're going to have to adjust the loop points to create a seamless loop. Now notice the shape of the Reese waveform. There's these bulges that come down and then bulge up, and it comes down and then bulge up again. So what we want to do is loop it so that we continue this pattern. So moving the loop endpoint somewhere around here would make sense, because then it loops back into this bulge here. Now the secret to making it seamless is to zoom in on the sample. And notice that there's this line across the waveform. That's the 0 point line. And what we want to do is choose a loop endpoint where the waveform crosses right at that 0 point line. You're going to zoom right in, and probably around here where it touches that line. Okay, now zoom out just a little bit, and notice that we see a sine wave here. So what we want to do is then set the loop start point so that it continues the phase of the sine wave. So notice that we've chosen a loop point where the wave crosses the 0 point from below. So then we're going to have to start the sample where the waveform crosses the 0 point from above to continue that sine wave. So let's zoom right out. And then look for the loop start point, zoom in on it, and then move that start point over. Probably around here would work. So it's crossing right at that 0 point. And notice now we're getting much more of a seamless loop as we hold down the note. Okay, so now we have the sample loop and we can play longer notes. You might want to tune it so it's mapped to the right key on your keyboard. So we can pull in the tuner here, and I'm playing the note of C. And it's telling me it's playing the B flat. So we're going to change the root note to B flat, which is also known as A sharp. And now our key is mapped. Now it is playing a few cents below 0, so we can detune it up a bit to balance it a bit, move that up. So we're getting a pretty clear C note here. Now the next step is we're going to split our signal into high and low so we can do some processing on the highs. Now I've spoken about this in a previous video, but I have an audio effect rack which I can pull in to split the signal between the highs and lows, and I'll leave a link in the description for you guys to grab it. But again, I'm just going to pull in this audio effect rack, and as you can see, it splits it between a high and low using an EQ. So I'm going to turn off the lows so we can focus on the highs where we're going to be doing the bulk of our processing. And the first step is I'm going to add some distortion using Ableton's amp simulator. And I'm going to be applying it before the EQ so I get the full effects of the distortion unit. Otherwise, the result will sound different, say if your distortion was added after the high pass. So you want to make sure it's right before the EQ. Now there's a number of different amp simulations. There's clean, boost, blues, rock. I'm going to use lead. I think it gives me the result we want to get that Locust Reese. As you can see, we're already getting there. Now, if you want to drive the signal a little more, you can turn on these EQ buttons. You can drive the mids up. You can increase the treble. Adjust it to taste. Now, you can increase the intensity of the distortion if you increase the gain. I'm liking it at 5. Now, to preserve the stereo dynamics, you might want to hit the output mode to dual. Alright, so we're getting close. The next step is we're going to be adding a phaser, which fattens up the sound. And I'm going to be adding it right after the amp simulation. Now we're going to be playing with the frequency here. Notice the tone of the distortion changes as you change the frequency here. I say around 1000 Hertz is good. We're going to be modulating this in the MIDI clip. Now you can change the color. That'll change the texture of that distortion as well. Alright, we're already getting very close. Now to add some wetness, I have a return effect here with a reverb and it's set to 100% wet, so we get only reverb here. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be sending the Reese signal to the reverb unit, so increase the A knob here. Say around there gives us enough. Now we may want to sculpt the EQ of the top end a little more. You may want to shave off some of those low mids. So I'm going to use a softer slope on my high pass and then adjust the frequency. Or 400 Hertz sounds good, but you can play it with your taste. You also may want to dampen some of the high end, so you can use a low pass, and again I'm going to use a softer slope and then adjust the frequency. And then we can boost some of those high mids. Okay, so we're getting close, and now we're gonna enable the lows again. So turn on the lows. Then you may want to adjust the balance between the highs and lows, so you can bring that down to highs if you like. Okay, so that pretty much is that Reese sound found in Locust. Now I'm going to show you some other effects later on to add some additional grit to the sound. Why don't we add some notes? So I have the Locust bass line here, and it's a 4-bar melody. Now, one of the secrets to Locust is that there's some movement in the top end of the Reese, and that's achieved by modulating the frequency of the phaser. So going back to the phaser here, just click on the frequency parameter, right click, and choose automation. So now we see the automation mode for the phaser. Now, for the envelope here, we're going to turn off linked here, so we can set it to, say, a 16-bar loop, and then we can add a point here, and a point here, and then 1 point here. So now we have some movement across the Reese. So I recreated the drum pattern from Locust. It's an amen with a 2-step beat. I also have this vocal sample that loops. And I have an 808 that hits every 4th bar of the phrase. And it just changes up every other 4 bars. So let's hear it all together. Alright, to take the sound to further levels, you can add some additional effects. On top of the amp simulator, I also found that I got good results from using Soundtoys Decapitator. So different distortion units will give you a different character. And I also found that using serum effects and turning hyperdimension to create some more fatness and stereo depth helped. Now another really cool effect to add some grit to your Reese is the erosion effect in Ableton. It adds some noise to your Reese. Now you can either use the noise or wide noise settings, and you can play with the frequency of the noise as well as the width, which is how narrow that band of noise is. So I encourage you guys to experiment. You can even play with automating the erosion frequency, and that could give you some really nice movement. Okay, so I have some of my own patterns for this Reese sample here. So I have this 4-bar Reese. I have some drums, so let's hear how it all sounds all together. Alright, so just for fun, I did a low remix of Locust here with my own Amen pattern. Hopefully I get the approval from Ed Russian Optical. Shouts out to Ed Russian Optical. But let's check it out. Alright, so that was my little remix of Lokuste. Alright, so that was the Reese sound for Lokuste, aka the Cutslo remix, and this was one of my favorite tracks from back in the day, so hope you enjoyed watching the process of creating this Reese. It was definitely a sound that I've always wanted to make back in the day, and only through the years, by gaining the knowledge and skills, was I able to authentically recreate this sound. And of course, make sure you explore and push the parameters so you can discover new territories with the Reese. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you guys found it helpful. And if you did, make sure you hit the like button, comment, share, and subscribe. And that's pretty much it for today, guys. Thanks again for watching. Keep practicing, and I'll see you at the next video.